It's the fall of 2024, and the city of Richmond is draped in the warm hues of autumn. The leaves, half fallen, line the sidewalks, painting the town in shades of amber and gold. Richmond isn't a huge city, but it's got that small-town charm mixed with the urban pace that most people thrive in. Nestled between the city's old brick buildings and modern offices is a row of familiar, cozy neighborhoods, suburbs where families settle down and life feels like a slow, comfortable ride. In the heart of the city lives our protagonist, Eric Mitchell. He's 35, with short dark hair that has just a few strands of gray showing, a sharp jawline, and a gaze that tells you he's seen more than he lets on. Eric isn't a bad guy, far from it. In fact, he's the kind of guy who'd drop everything to help you move, even if he just met you. But lately, things in his life haven't been as easy as they used to be. Eric's been married to Laura for almost 7 years now. They met when they were both in their late 20s, in a small coffee shop near the university. She had a laugh that could light up a room, a smile that could melt the toughest guy's heart, and she made him feel seen in ways he hadn't known he needed. They had a whirlwind romance, filled with spontaneous road trips and lazy Sunday mornings spent reading the newspaper in bed. And, for a while, that was enough. But that was then. This is now. Now, Eric finds himself staring at the picture on his phone. Laura, looking happier than he's ever seen her, posing with a group of friends at a winery event that he didn't know about. It's been 3 weeks since she mentioned going out with her friends, and when she came home that night, she'd been distant. Not cold, not overtly anything, but enough that Eric started wondering about her late nights, her distant phone calls, and that one time when he found her phone unlocked. There was a text from a number he didn't recognize, something about missing her and seeing her again soon. And that's how it all started. A small spark, a quiet suspicion, the kind that, if left unchecked, would grow into a full-blown fire. It's a Saturday afternoon, and Eric's pacing around their apartment, trying to make sense of everything. The kitchen's clean, but the silence feels oppressive. He knows something's wrong. He can feel it in his bones, but he can't shake the doubt. Does he confront Laura? Does he let it slide and risk losing her in the process? Just then, the door opens and Laura walks in. She's got a bright smile on her face, the kind that used to ease his mind. But today it feels forced. She doesn't notice the way he's staring at her, lost in thought, until she's already taken off her coat and kicked off her shoes. "Hey, babe," she says, walking into the kitchen. "You okay?" Eric doesn't answer right away. He watches her, eyes scanning her for any signs of guilt, but there's nothing. She looks just as she always does, beautiful but distant. The disconnect between them is palpable, even though they haven't said a word about it. "Yeah," Eric finally says. "I'm fine. Just..." He cuts himself off. He wants to ask her. He wants to say, "Is there someone else?" But the words get stuck in his throat. He's not ready for that. Laura looks up at him, concern flickering across her face. She's noticed. She's always been good at that, reading him when no one else could. "Are you sure? You seem a little off." Eric forces a smile. "Yeah, just thinking about stuff. You know? Nothing serious." "All right," she says, but he can hear the hesitation in her voice. She doesn't quite buy it, but she doesn't push. They've been through this dance before in different forms. The quiet moments where they avoid talking about the hard stuff. But now, for the first time, Eric knows he can't keep ignoring it. Something's happening, and he's starting to see it. It's more than just a hunch. It's the way she doesn't share details about her days anymore. The way she avoids his questions. The way she now spends hours texting in another room when she used to be right by his side. The tension sits between them like an elephant in the room. "You want to go out tonight?" Laura asks, trying to lighten the mood. But it feels too late for small talk. Too late to ignore the cracks in their marriage. Eric considers her offer for a moment. They used to love going out on Saturday nights, dinners, movies, spontaneous adventures. But now it feels forced. Like everything between them has been reduced to rituals. "Maybe we should stay in tonight," Eric says, finally breaking the silence. He knows it's not the answer she was hoping for, but he can't bring himself to do anything else. Laura nods, her smile fading slightly. Okay, sure. I'll just order something. She moves to the kitchen, her back turned to him, her posture stiff. Eric's heart sinks a little, but he doesn't move. His thoughts race. He's not sure what to do next, but the thought of confronting her makes his stomach churn. He doesn't want to accuse her. He doesn't want to make her feel like she's being questioned. But he also can't just sit back and pretend like everything's fine when it's not. Laura spends the rest of the afternoon in the kitchen, preparing dinner, while Eric sits on the couch, his mind running in circles. He keeps replaying the text he saw, the one that came from an unknown number. Miss you, hope to see you soon. The words echo in his mind. Miss you. Laura comes back in with 2 plates of food, setting them down on the coffee table, but Eric can't focus on the meal. His mind is still stuck on that text. He needs to know. He has to know what's going on. Laura, he says quietly, his voice low. She looks up, surprised by the tone in his voice. Yeah. Are you? He stops himself, unsure how to finish. How do you ask the person you love if they're cheating on you without sounding crazy? Without sounding like a jealous fool? But Laura can see it in his eyes. She can feel the weight of the question hanging in the air, even if he hasn't said it outright. What is it, Eric? She asks, her voice soft but guarded. Eric takes a deep breath. It's time. He's going to ask the question, even if it scares him. He has to. Are you seeing someone else? There's a long pause. For a moment, neither of them says a word. And then, Laura's eyes flicker, just for a second, and Eric knows. He knows that this isn't something he's imagined. Something's been happening. Something that's been kept in the shadows, hidden away until now. Eric waits, his heart pounding in his chest. The truth is just a breath away. Laura's eyes flicker. Just for a second, a tiny twitch, but enough for Eric to catch it. That flicker feels like a slap, like she's been holding on to something for too long and now, finally, it's all coming to the surface. He can't look away from her, can't stop the pit in his stomach from growing larger. The air between them feels thick, suffocating. He knows this moment is crucial, knows he's about to learn something he might never be able to forget. Laura starts, but she doesn't finish. The words hang in the air, unspoken, and Eric can feel his heartbeat in his ears. It's like the entire world is waiting for her to speak, but she's struggling with whatever she's about to say. Laura, just tell me. Please. Eric says, his voice low, but the urgency is there now. He's done waiting. She sits back, hands on her knees, avoiding his gaze. It's clear she's trying to find the words, but the hesitation is too much. Eric takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything that's happened in the last few weeks crashing down on him. The uncertainty, the doubt, the anger, he's not sure what hurts more, the fact that something might be wrong or the fact that he's been blind to it for so long. I'm not seeing someone else, she finally says, her voice tight, almost as if she's forcing the words out. Eric breathes out in relief, but then, before he can let himself feel better, she adds, but there's something I've been hiding from you. The words hit him like a ton of bricks. He wasn't ready for that. Not at all. His chest tightens, and all the breath he had just taken seems to get stuck in his lungs. He waits, unsure if he wants to hear what's coming next, but knowing he has to. He needs to know what she's been hiding. Needs to know the truth, no matter how painful. Laura, what are you talking about? Eric asks, his voice cracking slightly, betraying the fear he's trying to hold back. She looks up at him now, her eyes full of something Eric can't quite place. Regret? Shame? Something darker, maybe. She opens her mouth, but the words don't come right away. Eric watches her, his mind racing, his body tense, as the silence stretches on. I don't know when it happened, Eric, she says softly, but I've been feeling disconnected from you for a while now. Eric doesn't know what to say. He knew something was off, but he hadn't expected this. He's not angry, not yet, but he feels a cold wave of realization washing over him. Something's been off in their marriage for a while, and he'd been too caught up in his own life, too busy with work, too distracted to notice. Laura's confession cuts deeper than anything else. She's felt it too. I didn't want to admit it, she continues, her voice almost a whisper. But I've been talking to someone. It's nothing physical, but I guess it's more than I should have allowed. Eric's heart sinks. She's been talking to someone. His mind races, imagining the worst, wondering what this person means to her, how far things have gone. Who is it? Eric asks, the question slipping out before he can stop it. His voice is barely above a murmur, but it feels louder than it should be, hanging in the space between them. I met him at work, she says, her voice steady now, but there's a sadness in her eyes. He's a coworker, someone I've been working closely with over the past few months. We just clicked, you know? I didn't think it would go anywhere, but it did. The weight of her words lands hard on Eric's chest. This isn't just about a simple misunderstanding or an awkward flirtation. Laura's been emotionally invested in someone else, and that, somehow, feels worse than anything else. I'm not in love with him, Eric, she adds quickly, as if trying to reassure him, but it doesn't help. But I've been talking to him a lot. Texting, calling, going out for coffee after work. I never meant for it to get this far, but it did. Eric sits back, unable to speak. His mind spins with thoughts he doesn't know how to organize. He wants to yell, wants to ask her how long this has been going on, but part of him can't bring himself to do it. There's still a small part of him that wants to believe there's a chance for them. But the reality is settling in, and it's harder to ignore now. So, you've been what? Leading him on. Eric finally manages to ask, his voice rough. Laura flinches at the words, but she doesn't deny it. I didn't want it to be like this, she says softly. But I got caught up in the attention. It's been so long since I felt noticed, Eric. And then he started talking to me, and I felt like I was important again. Like I mattered. Eric feels his heart twist. He doesn't know how to respond to that. He's been so wrapped up in his own world that he didn't see his wife fading away from him. And now, here she is, telling him she felt unseen in their marriage. He feels the guilt pressing in on him, the weight of all the moments he ignored, all the times he chose his work over his wife. I've been selfish, he says, finally breaking the silence. His voice is quiet, regret lacing every word. I should have noticed. I should have paid more attention. Laura's eyes soften, and she reaches out to touch his hand. Eric, this isn't just on you. I've been shutting you out, too. I don't know when it started, but I stopped talking to you. I stopped sharing with you, and that created this distance. This is on both of us. Her words hang in the air, and Eric can't deny it. It wasn't just her. They both played a part in this. He didn't see her slipping away because he was too busy with everything else. And she, in turn, didn't reach out to him when she needed to. They both failed each other, and now they're left with the mess they've created. Eric pulls his hand away, standing up and pacing across the room. He needs space. He needs to think. He can't keep sitting here, trying to hold it all together when his whole world feels like it's unraveling. I don't know what to do, Laura, he admits, his voice strained. I don't know if I can fix this. She stands up, walking over to him and placing a hand on his shoulder. I don't know either, but I want to try, Eric. I don't want to throw everything away. For the first time in a long time, Eric feels a glimmer of hope. Maybe they can fix this. Maybe they can rebuild what's broken. But he knows it's going to take time, effort, and a lot of hard conversations. He doesn't know if he's ready for that, but he's willing to try. The room feels quieter now, the air heavy with the weight of what's been said. They're standing at a crossroads, unsure of where the path will lead, but for the first time, they're facing it together. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. The next few days pass in a blur, each one feeling like a slow-motion replay of the last. Laura and Eric are walking a fine line between trying to salvage something from their unraveling marriage and facing the undeniable truth that everything has shifted. They've really talked about their issues, about their needs and fears, but no matter how many conversations they have, no matter how many "I'm sorry's" are exchanged, the reality remains. Trust has been shattered. Laura isn't quite ready to let go of her new connection, and Eric isn't sure he can move past the idea of someone else taking the space he once occupied in her heart. Yet both of them are trying. Slowly, cautiously, they're beginning to rebuild the pieces of their lives together. But then, one night, everything changes. It's just after midnight when Eric gets the text. He's lying in bed, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, thinking about how far he's come from the man he was just a month ago. He hears the familiar buzz of his phone, a low vibration that cuts through the silence of the night. He glances at the screen. It's from Laura. "Can we talk? I need to tell you something." Eric sits up, his heart racing. There's an unease in her message, a desperation he's never seen before. She's been distant all week, trying to regain control of her emotions, and he's been trying to give her space. But something tells him this isn't just a casual check-in. Something is wrong. Without thinking, he taps out a quick reply. "Where are you?" The response is immediate. "I'm at the office." It's late. Too late for a normal work meeting, especially for a conversation like this. Eric doesn't hesitate. He grabs his keys and heads out the door. The office building is eerily quiet when Eric arrives. He's never been this late before, and the air feels heavy with anticipation. He enters through the back door, the door that leads to the small break room where Laura usually drinks her coffee in the mornings. There she is, standing by the vending machine, her back turned to him. She doesn't hear him approach, and he takes a moment to study her. There's something about the way she's standing, her shoulders slumped, her hands in her pockets, that sends a chill through him. This isn't the woman he's been speaking to in their attempts to repair their marriage. This is someone else. "Laura?" he calls softly. She jumps, turning around quickly. Her face is pale, her eyes red-rimmed, like she's been crying. It hits him harder than he expects. He was prepared for confrontation, for anger, maybe even for the cold distance that's grown between them. But this vulnerability? It feels like the ground is slipping beneath him. "Eric, she trails off, swallowing hard, trying to find the right words. "I didn't know how to say this, but I think you deserve to know the truth." Eric takes a step forward, his mind racing. "What's going on, Laura?" She bites her lip, avoiding his gaze. "I've been talking to him, the guy from work, the one I mentioned before." Eric feels his chest tighten. The pit in his stomach deepens. He's braced himself for this, but hearing her confirm it, it's like a blow to the gut. "And?" he asks, his voice tight with restraint. Her eyes flicker with uncertainty. She looks torn, like she's trying to decide whether to go through with this, whether to finally come clean. "I didn't want to admit it, but..." She hesitates. "It's more than just talking. We've kissed, Eric. Just once. But it meant something. More than it should have." The words hang in the air, heavy and sharp, cutting through the quiet of the room. Eric can barely breathe, his mind spinning. It feels like the floor has dropped out from under him. A kiss. One kiss. But it changes everything. It makes the betrayal feel real. It's no longer just emotional distance or unspoken feelings. It's physical, something that can't be ignored. For a moment, Eric doesn't say anything. His hands ball into fists at his sides, his body rigid with shock and anger. He doesn't want to lash out. He doesn't want to hurt her, no matter how much the betrayal stings. But it's hard to contain the rush of emotion flooding through him. He forces himself to take a breath, trying to stay calm. "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know," Laura whispers, her voice shaking. "A few months, maybe. Started small, just conversations at work. Then it turned into lunch breaks, then more after hours. And then that night, it happened. But I regret it. I never meant for it to go this far." Eric's heart aches. She regrets it now, but it doesn't change the fact that it happened. That kiss was a line crossed. And the worst part is that, even though she says she regrets it, Eric can't help but wonder. Is it too late? Has this other man become more than just a fleeting moment for her? He runs a hand through his hair, the weight of the situation settling in. "Do you love him, Laura?" She looks at him, her eyes filled with guilt. "No, I don't. But I think I was looking for something I've been missing. Something you and I haven't had in a long time. Eric steps back, his mind reeling. He wants to scream, wants to yell at her for everything she's done. But he knows, deep down, that this isn't all her fault. He's been checked out, too. He's been distracted, too focused on his own life to notice her slipping away. But the damage is done now. The room feels smaller, the air thicker as the realization hits him. This isn't something that can be fixed overnight. This isn't just a bump in the road. This is a turning point in their lives, in their marriage. What do we do now? Eric asks, his voice hollow. Laura stands there, her eyes brimming with tears. She doesn't have an answer. Neither of them do. The silence between them stretches, unbearable and heavy. Eric can feel the weight of everything they've been through, everything that's been said and unsaid. It's a moment of reckoning, a moment that will define the future of their relationship. Will they fight for it, or will they let it slip away? After that night in the office, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. Laura's confession hung in the air like a storm cloud, and no matter how hard he tried to ignore it, the weight of what she told him pressed down on his chest. The truth, as ugly as it was, had a way of seeping into every corner of his life. Every conversation with Laura felt strained, like there was a wall between them that neither of them knew how to tear down. They still tried, of course, they still had dinners together, still spent time talking about their day, but nothing was the same. And every time Eric looked at her, he couldn't help but wonder, was this it? Was this the end of the road? But just as things were beginning to settle into a fragile routine, an unexpected phone call changes everything. It's late one evening, after dinner, when Laura's phone buzzes across the table. She's quiet for a moment, looking at the screen, her face unreadable. Eric watches her carefully, trying to gauge what she's thinking. She doesn't answer immediately, but the silence between them deepens. He leans forward. Who is it? Laura hesitates, her fingers hovering over the phone, before she sighs and places it down on the table. It's him. From work. Eric's heart skips a beat. The guy. The one she kissed. His hands ball into fists under the table, his mind immediately racing with questions. I don't want to talk to him, Eric, she says softly, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. The words hit him harder than any physical blow. He's already standing before he realizes it, moving toward her with a mix of anger and frustration boiling inside. Then why are you still talking to him? Why don't you just cut it off, Laura? Why are you letting this drag on? His voice cracks, the emotion pouring through in ways he didn't anticipate. Laura stands up quickly, backing away. Because I don't know what else to do, Eric. I've been so lost. I've been trying to figure out who I am without you, without us. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I don't know if I can go back to the way things were. Eric feels a rush of panic mixed with betrayal. His breath catches in his throat. He doesn't know how to process what she's saying, but he knows one thing for sure. This is the tipping point. Without another word, he grabs his keys and storms out of the house, needing space, needing air. He doesn't know where he's going, doesn't care. His mind is in a whirlwind, everything from their past together playing in his head like a movie reel. Later that night, Eric drives aimlessly through the city, trying to clear his head. The streets blur past him, each streetlight a fleeting moment, each corner a sharp turn in the direction of his thoughts. His thoughts keep returning to the same question. How did it get this far? He pulls into a parking lot and sits in his car, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. His mind flashes back to that night when he first found out about Laura's infidelity. The look on her face as she confessed. The guilt, the regret. But now, all that regret feels like a hollow promise. One that he's not sure he can trust anymore. He feels a sudden pang of anger. One that seems to come from nowhere but rises up in his chest like a tide. Without thinking, he picks up his phone and calls the one person he hasn't heard from in weeks. His old friend. Ryan. Ryan. I need to talk, Eric says, his voice tight, almost unrecognizable. There's a pause on the other end before Ryan answers, his voice warm but concerned. Eric? You okay? Does it ever get easier? Eric asks, his voice breaking. Does the pain ever go away? Ryan is quiet for a moment. You're in the middle of it now, man. It's hard to see it, but the answer is yes. Eventually, it gets better. But only if you make the choice to heal. Eric hangs up abruptly, the words ringing in his ears. He knows Ryan's right, but it doesn't make the decision any easier. And right now, he feels more lost than ever. The confrontation. The next morning, after barely any sleep, Eric returns home, expecting tension. But what he finds is something far worse. Laura is gone. Her bags are packed, her things scattered across the floor. The note she left behind is simple, yet it cuts through him like a knife. I need time, Eric. I don't know if I can fix this, but I need to figure out what I want, what I need. I can't keep doing this. Eric stands frozen, staring at the note. For a moment, everything is silent. Then, in the distance, he hears the door to their apartment close softly. She's gone. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. She's really gone. Laura is walking away, leaving him behind to pick up the pieces. He crumbles. Every ounce of pain, every ounce of betrayal pours out in waves. He's too late, he realizes. Too late to fix things, to save their relationship. But just as the weight of his failure settles over him, another thought rises. If Laura can walk away, if she can leave without a second thought, then maybe it's time for him to start walking, too. The decision. Days pass, each one heavier than the last. Eric finds himself drowning in his thoughts, his loneliness consuming him. But through the quiet nights and restless days, he comes to a realization. This isn't just about Laura. It's about him, too. About his own mistakes, his own neglect. He knows he's been just as responsible for their downfall as she has. But it's not too late to change. It's not too late to rebuild, either with Laura or on his own. And for the first time in a long time, Eric feels a flicker of hope. He's going to fight for himself. Fight for the life he deserves, even if that means doing it alone. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more. The next step is coming soon. Stay tuned for the climax. It's been a week since Laura left. Eric has tried to keep himself busy, to fill the void left by her absence. But nothing seems to work. He spends his days pacing his apartment, checking his phone for messages that never come, staring at his reflection in the mirror, and wondering how things got so bad. The silence in his home is deafening. He no longer hears the soft sounds of Laura moving around. No more late-night conversations. No more shared laughter. It's just him, alone. But the tension is beginning to crack. He knows Laura's been struggling with her feelings. He saw it in her eyes the night she left. And, deep down, he knows it isn't all her fault. He's been distant, cold, and unavailable for too long. Maybe he didn't see it at first, but the reality of what he's done is now impossible to ignore. And it's slowly eating at him. Eric wakes up one morning to a message on his phone. It's from Laura. Can we meet? I need to talk. His heart stops. For a moment, everything else fades away. She wants to talk. She's coming back? Is this the moment he's been waiting for? Or is it just another cruel reminder of what they've lost? The confrontation. They meet at a small cafe downtown, a place that holds too many memories for Eric. It's where they first met, where they shared their first date, where they had countless late-night talks. And now it feels like a cemetery. Laura's waiting at a table in the corner when he walks in. She looks tired, worn down, her eyes heavy with the weight of everything that's happened. When she sees him, she doesn't smile. Instead, she just looks at him for a long time, her gaze sharp and calculating. Hey, Eric says quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. There's an awkwardness between them now, one that wasn't there before. He can't remember the last time they spoke without a wall between them. Hey, Laura replies, her voice soft. She looks at the table for a moment, taking a deep breath before meeting his gaze. I've been thinking about everything. Eric swallows hard, his palms suddenly clammy. Me too, he admits. I've been thinking about a lot of things, Laura. About us? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, he says, his voice cracking slightly. About how I've treated you, how I let things slip between us. I've been an idiot, Laura. I know I've messed up. Laura looks at him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. She's been hurt too many times, but there's something in his voice now that makes her pause. She can tell he's not just saying it to make her feel better. He's saying it because he believes it. He's feeling it. And maybe, just maybe, that's a step towards something. I've been thinking too, Laura says, her voice trembling just a bit. And I know I've made mistakes. I know I hurt you. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I don't want to keep running from this. From us. I don't know if it can be fixed, Eric. I really don't. Eric feels a sharp pain in his chest at the words. He wants to reach out to her, to tell her that they can fix it, that they can work through this together, but he doesn't know how. The damage feels too deep, the cracks in their relationship too wide to bridge. But he knows something now. He can't just let her go. He can't let them go without trying one last time. I can't tell you that everything's going to be okay, Eric says, his voice steadying. But I know I'm willing to fight for us, for what we had. I don't want to give up yet, Laura. Laura stares at him, her heart aching. She wants to believe him. She wants to believe that this time, things will be different. But she's scared. She's scared that he'll change again, that he'll pull away, that they'll be stuck in the same toxic cycle. I don't know, Eric, she says, shaking her head. I don't know if I can believe that anymore. The tension builds. The next few days are a blur. Eric can't focus at work. He can't focus anywhere. He keeps replaying that conversation with Laura in his head, trying to figure out if there's hope left for them. She's so torn, so uncertain. And even though he's doing everything he can to prove that he's willing to try, he knows that words aren't enough. Not anymore. But something is changing in him, something deep down that he hasn't felt in a long time. It's as if this whole situation, this heartbreak, has woken something inside of him. A desire to fix things. A desire to not let this be the end of his story with Laura. At the same time, Laura's emotions are all over the place. She's been getting messages from her old coworker, the one she kissed. He's been reaching out, trying to make things right, but she's hesitant. She doesn't know what she wants, who she wants, or if she even deserves to be happy again. But she knows one thing. She can't keep living in this limbo, stuck between two worlds. The pivotal moment. One night, after a few more days of tense silence between them, Laura calls Eric. She wants to talk. Again. This time, when they meet, she doesn't pull any punches. She's made up her mind. I'm leaving, Eric, she says, her voice trembling but firm. I can't stay here anymore. I've thought about it, and I think it's time for both of us to move on. The words hit Eric like a punch to the gut. He's been preparing for this, but it doesn't make it any easier. His heart sinks, and he feels that familiar ache in his chest, the one that's been growing ever since she left the first time. Please don't, he says, his voice thick with emotion. I can't lose you, Laura. Not like this. But she shakes her head, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know how much more I can take. I need space. I need to find myself again. Eric watches her walk away, the last shred of hope slipping through his fingers. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more updates as the story moves toward its climax. The next few days feel like a lifetime for Eric. He barely sleeps, his mind racing at full speed, going through the same loop of thoughts again and again. The image of Laura walking away from him haunts him. She's leaving, and no matter how hard he tries to hold on, it's slipping through his fingers. But one night, while he's pacing around his apartment, his mind trying to make sense of it all, there's a knock at the door. It's Laura. She's standing there, hesitating for a moment, before she steps inside without saying a word. For a second, neither of them speaks. The air between them is heavy, thick with everything unsaid. The silence screams, and Eric can feel the weight of it, almost like an unbearable pressure in his chest. I've been thinking, Laura says, her voice small but steady, eyes searching his face as if looking for something. A sign. Promise. Anything. Eric looks at her, unable to mask the storm of emotions swirling inside him. I don't want to lose you, Laura. You don't know how much I need you. We've been through so much, and I'm not ready to let go. I can't. Not like this. Laura looks away for a moment, her hands trembling at her sides. Eric, I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can trust myself, she admits quietly. Her voice breaks just slightly, and for a moment, Eric sees the raw vulnerability in her eyes, the same vulnerability he had pushed away for so long. I've made mistakes. We both have. She continues, her gaze now locked onto his. But we can't keep doing this. Not like this. I need to know if we can even fix things. If it's worth fixing. Eric takes a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. We've got to try, he says, his voice thick with emotion. We owe it to ourselves to try. Whatever it takes, I'm ready. I want us to work, Laura. I want you. For the first time in weeks, Laura reaches out. Her hand trembles as she touches his arm, and he can feel the electricity between them, even though they're still miles apart in so many ways. They stand there for a moment, just breathing in the shared space. Then, she speaks again. I kissed him, she says softly, almost as if she's confessing a sin. I kissed him the night we had that fight. I was confused, and, I don't know, Eric, I just felt so lost. I needed something to fill that emptiness. Eric feels like he's been punched in the stomach. Her words hit him hard, but he doesn't pull away. He wants to feel everything, to face the reality of what they're dealing with. This is their moment. Either they break apart completely or they decide to fight together. Did you do more than just kiss him? Eric asks, his voice tight, but not angry. He's not angry, at least not yet. He's just trying to understand. Laura shakes her head quickly. No, it was just a kiss. But it doesn't matter. It's what it represents. It means that I gave up, that I was already checked out. I didn't know how else to deal with it. Eric closes his eyes for a moment, trying to contain the wave of emotions crashing over him. He knows the situation is complicated, messy even, but this is the reality. It's not going to be easy to come back from this. I can't pretend like it didn't happen, she adds, but I want to make it right. I want to try again. There it is. The hope that Eric thought he'd lost. The desire to fix things, to rebuild. And it's more than just a fleeting wish. It's a genuine desire. She's not giving up. For the first time in weeks, Eric feels the weight lifting off his shoulders. He wants to believe her. He wants to trust that they can fix what's broken. The next few days are full of uncertainty. They both know they're standing at a crossroads, and there's no turning back. Whatever happens now will define what comes next. Eric tries to be patient, but the silence between them is deafening. They're both scared of losing each other for good, scared of the damage that's already been done. But the more they talk, the more they realize how much they still care. Even after everything, there's a spark between them, a connection that neither of them can ignore. It's not perfect, and it's not easy, but it's real. One evening, after a particularly intense conversation, they both sit in silence on the couch. The tension is still there, but it feels different now. More like a test, one that neither of them is willing to fail. The stakes are higher than ever. Then, Eric says something that he's been holding on to for a long time. I love you, Laura, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I've always loved you, even when I was pushing you away. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Laura looks at him, her eyes softening. The tears that have been threatening to fall finally break free, and she doesn't try to hide them. I love you too, she says, her voice thick with emotion. I don't want to lose you. And for the first time in what feels like forever, they kiss. It's not passionate or fiery. It's slow, tentative, as if they're both testing the waters. But it's real. And it's a beginning. A new beginning. The following week, Laura faces a decision. She's been given an opportunity to move away for work. It's a big opportunity, one that could change the course of her life. But it means leaving Eric behind. She's torn. She doesn't want to leave, but she also knows that she needs to take control of her life again. She can't keep running from herself, from the mistakes they've made. She needs to find her own path before she can decide if she and Eric can have a future together. One night, She sits down with Eric to tell him her decision. She's scared, but she knows she has to be honest with him. Eric, I've been offered this job. It's a chance to get away, to start fresh. And I think I need that. Eric's heart sinks, but he doesn't show it. He's been expecting this. I understand, he says, his voice steady. I know you need to figure things out. I just want you to be happy. If this is what you need, then I'll support you. Laura looks at him, and for a moment, she's unsure. But what about us? Eric pauses for a moment before replying. We don't know what the future holds, but I believe in us, Laura. I believe that whatever happens, we'll figure it out. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, they both believe it. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more updates as the story continues toward its climax. The days after Laura's decision to leave for her new job are filled with uncertainty, but there's also an unspoken understanding between her and Eric. They've faced the hardest part of their relationship, the betrayal, the hurt, and the tough decisions. And while there's still work to be done, the foundation they've built feels stronger than before. Eric knows that Laura needs this time to find herself. She needs to explore who she is beyond the confines of their relationship, to figure out if she's the person she wants to be on her own. And in that space, there's a strange kind of peace that begins to settle over both of them. For the first time in a long time, Eric isn't consumed by his fears. He's not afraid of losing Laura. He's afraid of not giving her the room she needs to grow. He knows that if they're ever going to make it, they have to be whole individuals first. As the weeks go by, Laura starts to thrive in her new role. The distance between her and Eric, while painful, brings clarity. She's learned to trust herself again, to embrace the uncertainty without fear. And through it all, she realizes something important. She doesn't want to face the future without Eric by her side. One quiet afternoon, after a long day at work, Laura picks up the phone. Her hands tremble slightly as she dials Eric's number. It rings a few times before he picks up. Hey, she says softly, her voice steady but warm. Can we talk? Eric feels a rush of anticipation as he hears her voice. Of course. What's on your mind? I've been thinking a lot. She begins, her voice filled with resolve. About us. About everything. Eric sits up straighter, his heart quickening. Yeah. I think I'm ready, Laura says, her words coming out in a rush. I'm ready to try again, Eric. For real this time. I don't want to be without you anymore. Eric's heart swells with a mixture of relief and joy. You're sure? I'm sure, she replies with conviction. We've both come a long way. I know we still have a lot to figure out, but we've learned so much about ourselves and each other. I want to do this. I want to make it work. And just like that, the uncertainty that had plagued them both begins to melt away. There are still challenges ahead, of course. Relationships aren't magic, and they don't fix themselves overnight. But what matters now is that they're both committed to moving forward, together. Eric and Laura's reunion isn't without its bumps. The past still lingers in their minds, those moments of doubt, the hurt that had once seemed insurmountable. But every day they make the choice to be there for each other. They communicate more openly than ever before, acknowledging their flaws and working through their challenges. And in that process, they both grow. Eric, who had once been so closed off, learns to open up, to be vulnerable without fear. He embraces his imperfections, knowing that they don't define him, but how he chooses to move forward does. Laura, too, learns to forgive herself. She understands that mistakes don't have to dictate the rest of her life. She's allowed to heal and she's allowed to start fresh. As the months pass, they both find themselves stronger, not just as individuals but as partners. They make new memories together, build new dreams, and slowly, they start to trust again. The bond between them, once fragile and broken, becomes something more solid, more enduring. One evening, after a long day of work, Eric comes home to find Laura waiting for him with a smile. They've been living together now for several months, and each day feels like a small victory. I've been thinking, Laura says, her voice light but filled with intention. How about we take that trip we've always talked about, just the two of us, somewhere far away from everything? Eric grins, the idea taking root in his mind. I like that idea, he says, his tone full of excitement. Let's do it. And so, together, they plan their getaway. An adventure to a place where nothing else matters but the two of them. They've learned to put the past behind them, and now they're looking forward to a future filled with endless possibilities. It's been a year since they made the decision to start over. And as they sit side by side on a plane to a quiet beach destination, they both feel a sense of peace. There's no drama, no unresolved tension, just a quiet understanding between them that this is the beginning of something new. As they watch the sun set over the horizon, Laura leans her head on Eric's shoulder. He wraps his arm around her, and for the first time in a long time, he feels truly at home. Their relationship isn't perfect. It never was, and it never will be. But it's real, and that's all that matters. They've both learned the power of forgiveness, the importance of communication, and above all, the value of never giving up on love as the plane touches down. They share a look of contentment. They've both come so far from where they started, and while they know life will continue to throw challenges their way, they're ready. They're ready for whatever comes next, because they know they'll face it together. And with that, we conclude the journey of Eric and Laura. Their story is one of growth, redemption, and the healing power of love. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this one. Until next time, take care and stay tuned for the next adventure.